Hi, Starseeds. This is Oriah, and I'm the founder of United Starseed Connections. And I am here with a special guest. I have been friends with Dennis Strahl for close to, I think, 10 years, and he is one of the most interesting and phenomenal human beings you will ever meet. He is a student of quantum physics and spirituality. He has many vast areas of interest that he has been studying over the years and even prior to meeting me. Everything from aliens to vortexes to even how to heal your body through frequency, sound, touch. He is like a mastermind of technology and information on Earth and off Earth, off planet. He also lives in the desert of Central California or Southern California, kind of like
Southern
California. It's
Yes.
way out there, and he has a lot of desert experiences. And he also mines. He does mining, and that's a whole nother topic. So there's many things he can talk about. We are definitely going to split our shows up into parts. This is going to be part one. And today we're just going to launch off with Dennis. We call him Desert Dennis. He calls himself Desert Dennis.
Yes, I do.
We're going to talk about how living in and exploring the remote desert areas has influenced his starseed inclinations. So Dennis, would you like to take it away?
Sure, no problem. Well, welcome everyone, and I'm delighted to be a part of Oriah's show today. This is a lot of fun, and yes, I've had a lot of interesting experiences over the years, in particular due to my many visits and ultimately living now for many years in deserts in both Southern California, east of Los Angeles, where I grew up, as well as the what they call the high deserts in central Nevada, where I've spent about 10 years in commercial mining of gold and copper and silver and all those fun things that we all make jewelry out of and all that stuff. So anyway, I had an uncle that had a place in Joshua Tree, which was one of the first places out in the desert. In fact, I think it was the first place that Oriah and Riz and I had rendezvoused at the Institute of Mental Physics,
Right.
which is in Joshua Tree, California. But I actually started going to Joshua Tree when I was only about 3 or 4 years old, because I had an uncle that had a place up there for many years, and we used to go out there for the weekend. And so he taught me about jackrabbits and rattlesnakes when I was 3, 4 years old. So obviously that influence of lots of fun times, because our emotions have everything to do with our beliefs today, had an influence on my love for the desert. And as I grew, I made regular trips out to the desert just to play, even though I lived in Los Angeles, and observed many interesting and unusual things. One of the places I started visiting, which I've also visited, interestingly enough, with Oriah and Riz, is a place called Giant Rock, which is a little place called Landers, just north of Joshua Tree. And Giant Rock and the little Giant Rock airport that used to be there was very famous for many years ago for UFO landings. And good old Dr. George Van Tassel, who you can look up on YouTube, was well known back in the 50s and the 60s. And in fact, I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you before, Oriah, but I was watching a UFO special one time on the Discovery Channel many years ago. And they had black and white footage of a UFO conference there at Giant Rock in 1952, which was the year I was born, interestingly enough. So on the Discovery Channel, it was a video documentary, and they had a camera up in the sky somehow, but they zoomed in, and you could see, because they said there are 5,000 people at this UFO convention. Well, 5,000 people at a UFO convention clear back in 1952, that was a lot of people to show up for a UFO convention anywhere on the planet. And this was clear back in the early 50s. So that whole area has had a history for many years of UFO sightings and all that kind of stuff. And of course, as we know, the big Giant Rock there was a prophecy that when it split, it would be an indicator of the shift that we're going through now, which ultimately did split. And so there's a lot of, so I've had those influences all these years going out to the desert, and then ultimately moved from the LA area, or actually Orange County, out here to the Palm Springs area in about 1980. And so I've been a desert rat living here in the desert ever since. But I've done a lot of exploration, and it's had a lot of influence on me, because one of the things that I've done over the years is gone out hiking in the middle of the night, in the middle of the desert, by myself, when there's a full moon, which you can see just fine, you don't need a flashlight, and just sit down and meditate in front of a cactus, for example, and connect with Mother Earth and look up into the sky. Of course, Orion knows this about me, always looking for UFOs.
Yes.
And I've seen my share over the years, in particular up in central Nevada, where I've done a lot of mining, because in that area, I'm right up off where our mining projects are, is right up off the northwest side of the Nevada test site, which encloses Area 51, which of course Area 51 is very, very famous for UFO sightings over all these years. They gradually expanded the perimeter because the people were getting too close on mountaintops with telescopes, and they didn't want them looking to see what was going on. So there's quite a history behind that. But I've been following all this stuff all through the years, and had prior to meeting Oriah and Riz, had my share of psychic readings, where I would get feedback that I had, extraterrestrial ties, so to say, and specifically with the Pleiadians and Arcturians. So, and of course, you have to wonder about that. When we hear things like that, we want some sort of a physical 3D validation, and sometimes that's not always forthcoming. A lot of times we have to ride on our feelings. And sometimes early in the morning, I will have a feeling, although I have no detail recall, that I was on a mothership that's cloaked and orbiting our planet with benevolent beings. I always believe that there are mostly benevolent anyway. There may be a few out there that are up to no good, but I believe that, in particular, and it's well known that Pleiadians and the Arcturians are benevolent beings that love us and have a lot to do with many of us that are here now to raise the frequency of the planet. So I would have to say I first became really conscious of these things happening on my whole cosmic perspective when I started making regular trips to the Institute of Mental Physics and discovering, for example, many people know about the vortexes that are at, in Sedona, Arizona, here in the U.S., but few know that there are vortexes at the Institute of Mental Physics. Well, it sits on 400 acres. And on several of the vortexes, there are Native American tribes many back years ago, because it was founded in 1942. It's been there since 1942. And they built their medicine circles with the rocks right on top of some of the vortexes there. And just about anybody that does a meditation walk and walks all around the circle there to the center will have profound mystical experiences of some sort. Well, overall experience, and also, I had driven by it many, many times over the years and looked at the sign and never really understood what was going on there. But how I really got introduced to it in depth was by a fellow that has been gone for a few years now, my dear friend Paul Burkett, who was my mining mentor, who got me into mining.
Right.
And he had been on the board of directors there for years because he knew the founder, who was trained by Tibetan monks. His name was Ding Lamay. He was from jolly old England, but spent many, many, many years up in the high Himalayas learning from the the shamans and all up in the Himalayas. And then he was told that his mission was, and of course all of this was fascinating in my understandings of metaphysics and everything, that his mission was to bring Tibetan Buddhism to the United States, but without looking like a heretic of some sort, because if you weren't a Catholic or a Protestant, then there was something wrong with you, right? So he decided to call it the Institute of Mental Physics, which I thought was fascinating, because that implies that we can control physics with our minds, hence mental physics. But we very geniusly, when people said, well, what's this mental physics stuff all about? And he would say, well, it's mystical Christianity. Well, of course, a term like that could apply to Protestants or Catholics. So he hooked them in. Yes. And founded it originally in 1927 in the state of New York, moved it to Los Angeles in the late 30s, and in 1942 moved it from downtown LA on Hobart Street, sold that building, and founded the current location in Joshua Tree in 1942, sitting on 650 acres originally. Now it's down to 420 acres. But on that property is the largest collection of Frank Lloyd Wright buildings. Of course, one of the most famous architects on the planet. Right. Is on that one property, and a lot of people don't realize that. So it's got classic architecture, 7 or 8 vortexes all over the property, which when you approach one, if you're sensitive.
I've actually, because they have them cordoned off with like little stones and flags, and some
Correct.
are stronger than others, but I've walked into those vortexes and felt them, and some are really strong, and some of
Yes,
them
they
I
are.
didn't want to leave. Like I stayed in it and I did not want to leave. Like it was giving me
Exactly.
so much information.
And many people have that experience. And of course, as Oriah knows, Joshua Tree was the very first location of a now very famous annual UFO conference that lasts for 4 days in a row, from Friday through Monday, from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m., 4 days in a row in 5 different rooms. You have 5 different lecturers to choose from. And people are coming in from around the world. Now, there have been 7 of those in a row.
Contact in the desert.
Contact in the Desert, yes. And the website, if anybody's curious, is contactinthedesert.com. But it's quite an event, has world-renowned scientists, quantum physicists. Oriah knows that I have great interest in quantum physics, in particular, how it interlaces and interfaces with spirituality and our ability to change our frequencies on purpose with the intent of spiritual expansion and to literally radiate and broadcast as much love as we can around the planet to all beings,
Right.
regardless of what their beliefs may be. And I know that that's the mission that Oriah is on. That's why I'm so drawn to Oriah and Riz. They're on a mission of love, which I believe that all of us that get involved in this path of metaphysics, that is our mission. One of the other little things that clued me in on a lot of the variety of information that's out there. There's a magazine which actually Riz has published a few articles in called the Sedona Journal of Emergence.
Right.
And about 50 of the top channelers from around the world would channel for that magazine. All 50 of them wouldn't be in the same issue, usually 15 to 20 of them, be 15 or 20 articles. But channelers from all around the world, channeling all different beings, Pleiadians, Arcturians,
Right.
Jesus, Sananda, Buddha, Krishna, you name it, and much the same way that Riz does. Riz very skillfully channels many different beings. And so that has had a great influence on my life in a positive way, always, because I found that in that magazine that all of the articles were always uplifting and enlightening. And you'd learn things that you want to do. Wow, that's something I can apply to my life today to make my life better today, to be a happier, more radiant person.
You know what people don't understand, Dennis, is that channeled material, when you have an authentic channel who's really channeling ascended masters and guides, the content is always positive. It's not that they're throwing a Pollyanna spin on it. It's just the vibration of truth and the way they speak it's a creation language, a universal language. It's always for the better good of all. So it's always a positive. There's no warnings. It's about uplifting and encouraging and growing. It doesn't matter what's happening on the star systems. So I'm glad you brought that up, because in the Sedona Journal, that's authentic channelers there, and Riz has channeled many, many times for them, and it's always positive.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's kind of critical for people that want to self-educate. Seek out the inspiring, loving information that you can find. And when you do that, regardless of who the channeler is, if they're a strong, clean, clear channel, as Oriah is mentioning here, it will resonate. You'll feel it in your heart. It's not so much a brain thing. Yeah, your brain is going to process it, but ultimately it's your heart that analyzes it. And when you get that elated feeling in your heart, then you know, gee, this is resonating for me, and I just know deep down inside that this is truth.
Correct.
And there's no better feeling than that.
That's the best feeling in the world.
Absolutely.
So even with all of your studying and all of your metaphysics and all of your diving into so many areas, notice how even after all these years, this is your final statement. So those of you who think that if you go into metaphysics, or if you start to get very deep into the world of cellular mutation and alien agendas, you have to remember that at the end, if your mission is always love, from beginning to end, it'll carry you through this journey. So
Exactly.
that's awesome, Dennis.
And, you know, in many of our, what I would call more mainstream, originally type of medical people, like Dr. Bruce Lipton,
Mm-hmm.
cellular biologist from Stanford, he talks about the fact that we are the masters of our genes, not the other way around. And he teaches that from a quantum perspective, but he always includes love in his explanations. It is never excluded. And there are so many great teachers out there that you can take advantage of. And, you know, I always recommend shop around and some will resonate for you, you know. I mean, for probably about, and I still have them all, I used to collect and get every single issue every month of the Sedona Journal of Emergence. And I probably have in my collection probably 15 or 16 years straight.
Wow.
Of having every issue. Yeah. Someday I may donate them up to
Probably 6 years worth, but that's a lot.
Yeah. I've got a whole bunch of them. But what I found was, and here's why I'm bringing that point up, is that there were certain channeled entities that I was drawn to. Pepper Lewis, for example, channeled Gaia, Mother Earth, for many, many years. And gosh, there's just dozens and dozens of different channelers that have channeled in that magazine. But you will find, if you decide to explore that area, that there will be certain ones that you gravitate to for whatever reason. You can't wait until the next issue when you're hoping that they'll have another article in the next issue, because sometimes they'd skip an issue or two, you know, because they can't fit all of the channelers' information in every month. But it's exciting to latch on to something like that. At least it has been for me, and it's helped me a lot, because I found that, well, for whatever reason, I have a lot to learn from this particular entity, so I will focus extra on the information that's coming through that particular divine being through this wonderful channeled material. And from day one, Riz's channelings just super resonated in my heart. No matter who it was that he was channeling, it just always makes your heart beat like crazy, for me anyway.
To this day.
And I know it does that for a lot of other people too, you know. So to me, the reason that we're all here, I like what, speaking of metaphysics, I've studied a lot of the teachings of Ramtha, who was channeled by J.Z. Knight. And Ramtha always says, we are here to make known the unknown. Well, how do you do that? In your own individual, creative, loving, wonderful way. Figure out what makes your heart sing. And when you figure out what makes your heart sing, you're on the right track.
Correct.
And, you know, and a lot of us are more sensitive, I think, to feelings than people give themselves credit for. Because, I mean, how many people have walked into a room maybe where it was a party or a get-together of some sort, and you look over in the corner and you see two people talking. You may not be able to hear what they're saying, but you can tell that one of them is angry.
Right.
You can feel it. You can see it in their eyes. And so we are all much more intuitive than we realize. And when I have invested myself in exploring all of this, it's always fun to exercise those in yourself, in your own personal self, and learn of all of these invisible truths. Because, you know, a lot of people will say, well, you're telling me to believe in something that is invisible. Well, we take a lot of things for granted that are invisible, yet we accept it as fact.
So true.
The signals between our cell phones, that's invisible.
That's so true.
Radio signals are invisible. Without a little widget called a radio, you couldn't prove to me that radio waves exist. Yet they're invisible. They're not detectable by any of our five senses until they're processed and sent through a speaker.
Right.
So people take that kind of stuff for granted. One of the things that Oriah and Riz and I have spoken of is energy healing, both with technology and hands-on. Both are possible, but there are some fascinating quantum physics type energy healing devices. One is called the life vessel, like blood vessel, but it's pronounced life vessel, that heals with light, frequency, sound, and vibration, all four. There's another one that was invented and developed by J.Z. Knight called the Blue Room, which uses high-frequency infrared blue light. And you sit in the middle of an octagonal room that has all this special blue light, and people have profound transformations regardless of what their pre-existing conditions were. And so when you witness that over and over and over again, and you realize, wow, it was non-invasive, There was no surgery involved. There were no prescription drugs. And this person had a major reversal of symptoms from something that was really severe, that maybe even the doctors, their medical doctors, had given them a death sentence.
Right.
So some people resign themselves to that type of attack. Well, I'm willing to try anything now because my doctor told me I got 90 days to live. And I've seen third and fourth stage cancer reversed. I've seen diabetes reversed. I've seen Parkinson's reversed.
So you have to give me all these links because people are going to be very interested. And so I'll put it at the bottom in the description box after.
Certainly. I'll be happy to do that. Yeah, because these are interesting things to explore.
Right.
And what I always recommend when it comes to that type of information, look for life vessel testimonials. Somebody that's gotten into the life vessel, which is climbing into a big box, basically. I don't mean to make it sound crude, but it's high-tech technology.
Right.
The blue room, you're laying down on a massage table that's perfectly centered in an octagonal room. Mm-hmm. There's reasons for that. There's numerology and quantum physics and sacred geometry behind the design of that particular technology. But I have witnessed so many times people with profound transformations, and it's really exciting because it just goes to show the power of your immune system. That's a pretty popular subject these days, our immune system, right, with what all is going on.
Right.
And so when you realize that you are also master of your immune system, and that's how you think and feel, moment by moment, profoundly affects your immune system, and you realize, wow, I can be healthy all the time.
Isn't it interesting because of what's happening that this is becoming a very big topic? So people are starting to become more interested in what makes you healthy more than ever before in history. So to be outside, to breathe, to get fresh air, have the sun on you, just your natural immunity, just breathing. Like, people are asking a lot more questions and learning about it now. So
absolutely.
In a way, this is a positive that came from it. So
yeah.
I'd like to ask you your first question. I have a little list of questions. So
sure, go right ahead.
When and why did you first begin visiting the deserts east of LA? So now you just covered that. So
yes.
Okay. Number 2, when were you first conscious of the influence of the desert environment on your cosmic perspective?
When I started visiting the Institute of Mental Physics on a regular basis, yes, and had some of my own mystical experiences there and talked to other people that were having mystical experiences because of all the events that have been conducted there. It's basically operated as a non-denominational spiritual retreat.
Right.
So large groups that are into spiritual growth, regardless of what their path may be, they take their group there for a remote retreat.
Yeah.
And so when you meet other people of like mind, like all of you listening to this right now, over and over again, and you hear all their stories, even if you were a little skeptical to begin with, you're going, well, maybe there's something to this, I mean, this guy that I met or this gal that I met is a professor of whatever, such and such prominent university. Well, they're not here because they're stupid.
Mm-hmm.
They're smart people
yes.
that are having these experiences, mystical, spiritual experiences, mystical, physical experiences with people from other planets, other dimensions. I always like to remind people, or ask people, when it comes to your dreams, what eyes are you seeing with? What eyes are you seeing with? Your eyes are closed, right? Well, what many people don't realize, and I think I learned this from David Wilcock, it wasn't from science learning, but apparently inside of our pineal gland are the same exact little cones that are in our eyeballs that we see with.
So can you break down the pineal gland for people who have never heard of that and where it's located?
The pineal gland is one of the two of the key glands in the human body that control your endocrine system and your autonomic nervous system, and all of these things are the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. But the pineal gland is what is referred to as the proverbial third eye here, because it's in the middle of your head, right, straight back in there. Mm-hmm. And so the pineal gland has always been considered by all of the ancient shamans and many of the ancient religions to be a key factor in our spiritual growth. In some religions, they don't talk about it at all because they don't want you to think that you're equal to the priest or the whatever. They want to maintain control. Right. Conventional religion. So a lot of them hide that information. You can find it if you look, but it's kind of hidden. And you have to say to yourself, well, you know, why would they do that? We all want to be free, sovereign, wise, loving beings. And so I continue to study all of this stuff. The more that I learn, Oriah, and all of you listening out there, the more I realize how little I know. And it just cranks up the dial of hunger for more knowledge. And it's never ending. You never, yeah, I know I'll never be to the point where it's, okay, I think I figured it out now. No,
Never.
I figured out what more I need to be studying in order to enhance my scope of knowledge and increase my skills in sharing with others.
Right. You know,
because right now sharing this kind of information is so critical to the shifting of this planet.
it's true. And you know, when the speaker is authentic is when it really, you can hear it clearer and it resonates. And if a speaker is still coming from some sort of agenda, or they're trying to manipulate in some way, or whatever their agenda is, you can feel that. So when somebody's teaching you and sharing this information, like you have great teachers that you learn from, when they're just authentically sharing information as they know it, it's so powerful and it comes in, you can receive it better. So you are very authentic, and I love that about you. Since I've known you, you are exactly the same. You've never deviated from your truth and your feelings and your beliefs. You've just gotten stronger and deeper and wiser, and hopefully the same for me. I think I get a little sillier as the years go by. Because
that's because we realize how we realize how important it is to have fun and be happy.
Totally.
And that profoundly affects your immune system.
Woo.
You know, a term that is being thrown about quite a bit these days, based on everything that's going on here in May of 2020, is fear porn.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's a lot of that in the media.
Yeah.
And I want everybody listening to this to be critically aware of the fact that any type of fear, anxiety, sadness, anger, those are all kind of emotions that are tied together, does weaken your immune system. So find whatever works for you.
Well, people don't realize the collective consciousness and it's like a shared, it's like when you were a kid and you played telephone and you shared the telephone message with the other person. Collective consciousness works that way. And
yes.
It's like a frequency that gets picked up. And there's people that are having a really hard time right now, and they don't necessarily know why. They can't put their finger on it. But what they don't know is they're picking up on the frequencies of millions and millions and millions of people who are upset, under distress, concerned that their whole safety network is falling apart, their governments are falling apart, their systems are falling apart. Everything they've ever known or everything they were believing in is now upside down. So they're super upset. So you could be innocently sitting in your house, minding your own business, and maybe you're not even that upset, but for some reason you feel this dark cloud, like in heavy energy around you, and you don't know what it is. But you don't realize, A, that you're an empath, and B, that you're processing so many souls, and you're processing what's happening for them. And there's a part of you that it takes it in for the love of humanity, and you want to purge it. And you don't know how, but you don't even know that that's what you're doing. But I recommend you purge it. And how you purge it is you do positive affirmations, you do positive ceremonies, crystal work, you do healing work, you get into the water, nature, and clear your energy field. But even a better piece of advice is not to take it on in the first place. Just be aware of it. But that's another thing about you, Dennis, is you are out there with the minerals, and you put your hand in so much dirt, you and your ATV.
Oh, yes, the minerals talk to me.
Woo!
They really do, yeah.
You are like shaman of the desert, like you're the shaman of the rocks.
Well, interesting that you would bring that up too, because it's something I haven't remembered for quite some time. But soon after I began mining on a full-time basis, which was for about 10 years straight, and I don't remember who it was I got this psychic reading from, but I was told that I was in on the creation of all of the minerals on this planet.
Right.
In order to facilitate everything that we take for granted. Because when it comes to metals coming out of the ground, I mean, you know, the silver solder that's on every circuit board in every cell phone. Well, gee, why do they call it silver solder? It's got silver in it. Where did that come from? Well, somebody had to go out and prospect,
Right.
find it, have some samples assayed, you know, institute a drill program, prove that it's there. Otherwise, the bank won't loan you the money to develop the mine. So there's a lot involved for us to have all of our electronic toys. I mean, look at all the products that just copper and silver alone are in. All the wiring in your house is copper. The windings on an electric car motor, just the windings alone is 75 pounds of copper. Where does all that come from? Somebody has to mine it.
Right.
So I was blessed somehow with this good nose for going out and finding minerals. And I got some really nice, and I'm not trying to brag here, but it's just something that happened a couple of times, because when you get it up to a certain point, you hire professional geologists that come in and do a finer assessment of what you have found to justify the expense of drilling, because it's very expensive to drill for minerals. And a couple of times, and these were two of the top geologists in the country that we would hire on a regular basis, both who had graduated from the Colorado School of Mining. And a couple of times they both commented, they said, you have no idea the value of what you learned from your buddy Paul, never having been in the mining industry before. And I said, well, what exactly are you talking about? And they said, he taught you how to find it. You seem to have a nose. You smell those minerals, because you showed us deposits today, because I would take them out on a tour of some new findings that Paul and I had been out exploring and finding. He was in his 80s already when I first started helping him.
Wow.
I was selling real estate here in the Palm Springs area for Coldwell Banker in Indian Wells. And Paul called me up one day and he says, hey, Dennis, he says, I need a little help. I'm up in my 80s now. I need a little help on my mining projects. Could you come help me out? And I said, sure, that sounds like fun. I could take a couple months off. Well, I took 2 months off, and that stretched into 6 months. I still hadn't even come home yet. Gone for like 6 months the first time, and out in the field prospecting, putting in new stakes, going down to the recorder's office and filing all the paperwork so that they were legitimately your claims, all of that stuff. So I got to learn from scratch, but it was really flattering to me, and it caused me to value and understand even more the knowledge that I gained from Paul, plus some sort of innate knowledge that I seem to have, where I would be able to find surface indications that when I take it, sometimes I'd just have pictures that I'd show our geologists when they first came into town, and they go, do you remember where that is?
Wow.
Yes. Well, where is it? Well, if we didn't have it staked yet, I wouldn't tell them.
They can't believe that you would find these places.
Correct. Because I've taken to, I remember one day I had Robin Hendrickson, who was one of our hired professional geologists. And I'd already taken him on quite a trek. And Paul wasn't able to come along with us. He just sat in the truck and waited, because I was taking this geologist over some pretty rugged ground. And the first 3 spots that I showed him were just hotter than a firecracker as far as surface indications of copper, which is that beautiful blue-green teal color ore. And ore in mining lingo just means dirt and rock that has extractable minerals. So if you hear the term ore in mining, it just means it has extractable minerals. And I'd really hiked him a long way, and it was rugged up and down into ravines and way up high again. And I said, I've got 2 more places to show you after the first 3, which were really rugged to get to. We were both huffing and puffing, right? Mm-hmm. And he says, they better be good, Dennis, because I'm already tuckered out. We've been hiking for 3 hours already.
Wow.
And I said, okay, trust me, they will be. And sure enough, those 2 more locations. And that was the first time that Robin paid me that compliment. He says, I got to hand it. He says, has Paul seen all these places? I said, no. I said, I was out, checking some of the stakes. He's had claims up here for years, and all this is our ground that we're walking you over. But no, he's never seen these spots. He says, well, he sure taught you well, because those were amazing surface indications. And of course, we were picking up samples each time. He says, we got to take these back and have them assayed, which means they analyze the mineral content in the chunk that you submit for to be tested at an assay lab, is what they call them in mining. So we used.
And how this is related to aliens is also that they are known to be coming here to mine as well, and they've been doing that from the beginning of the creation of the planet.
The Anunnaki mining gold 200,000-300,000 years ago in South Africa, and a lot of interesting stories about that subject from one of the keynote speakers for many years at Contact in the Desert, Michael Tellinger. And any of you that have never heard of Michael Tellinger, if you're interested in geology and archaeology and the history of the planet and why the Anunnaki were here and who the Anunnaki are, I highly recommend look him up on YouTube, Michael Tellinger, Tellinger. Sensational speaker. He's got lots of videos on YouTube, and you'll be entranced and fascinated by his knowledge. And of course, in talking about the Anunnaki, even though he's primarily an archaeologist and a geologist, when you talk about the Anunnaki, you're talking about ETs.
Yes.
That's where they're from.
Right.
Supposedly from the, the 10th planet, Nibiru. And so yeah, there's how all this stuff intertwines is fascinating.
Can you explain the fascination and interest that aliens have with gold?
Well, the information that I've read and heard about as far as the Anunnaki go is that it actually has something to do with their sustenance on their planet. I believe that they actually vaporize it and blow it into their atmosphere. Now, that kind of makes sense to me. Why? Because if you remember many of the ancient stories about the Egyptians, and I know that you and Riz have been over there to Egypt many times, was that they were ingesting monatomic gold.
Right.
And that it had spiritual and physiological beneficial effects.
Is it because it holds such a it's such a high conduit, it holds such high frequencies, or it could be code?
I believe that you're hitting the nail right on the head, Oriah, because
it's flexible, so it can be ingested.
Yes, everything has a frequency. I mean, the reason that there's a difference between, you can have an orange laser, a blue laser, a green laser, and a blue laser. But what's really the difference from them? Well, if you hook them up to a spectrometer, each one of those colors is vibrating at a different frequency. You know, so frequency has everything to do with it. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. And there's been something about gold for all of these centuries. It's interesting, you know, all of the other currencies go up and down and everything, but you can't make anything with the paper that we call money. Gold has many practical, applications aside from the fact that it makes beautiful jewelry. It's the best conductor of electricity. I mean, they could put gold circuitry on all the circuit boards in your cell phone, but then it would really cost you a fortune. It was gold instead of silver.
Yeah.
So it affects, it's interesting how gold affects so many areas of our lives that we don't realize.
When Riz and I were taking our retreats and our groups through India, we would go into the temples where the Maharajis lived, and the entire temples, the giant 40-foot ceiling walls, the stones, the pillars, everything would be covered in gold.
Wow.
The pools would be covered in gold. I mean, what is that like, you know, to live? I know Trump, his house is covered in gold, but so we hear. But yeah, the properties, the gold properties. So it's not that you're just interested in mining for the sake of mining, Dennis. And I know that you don't just mine because it's good for trading and making money, but it's also because there's a deeper lineage that's involved in understanding minerals and why we have them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why we have them and the effect that they have on us and for us, how they benefit us in everyday life. I mean, some people lose track of the fact. I mean, how many things, your washing machine, your dryer, your refrigerator, your stove, those are all made of metal. Somebody had to mine that metal out of the ground for you to have a stove, for you to have a refrigerator, for the frame of your car. The majority of cars are still now made out of metal unless you have a fiberglass body. So there are many areas where our physical lives are affected by Mother Earth producing all of these wonderful minerals for us.
You know, Red Eagle has suggested, Red Eagle is the spirit guide that my husband channels, and he has suggested many times a great way to have a meditation of gratitude, if you want to know where to start, is to connect, close your eyes and connect to how many people it took for you to sit on the couch you're sitting on, for the table that you have your drink on, for the glass that you're drinking your water from, how many people and how many lives and how many families were involved so that you can have this conversation, so you can hear the microphone, the earbuds, the cushion you're sitting on, the car you're driving in, the glasses on your face. thousands and millions of people. And if you tune in and go into the soul contract and the connection that these souls, these beings have with each other, with you, with the future, with their own lives, you will tap in to the type of matrix you want to tap into. Not the matrix you hear about that you got to get out of, but the matrix of consciousness, of the frequencies of creation. You're tapping into, it's like the bone marrow of humanity. And when you go there, then you can really have gratitude.
Yes. And gratitude is I'm so happy that you brought up that term, because for me and many others, and many of the metaphysical teachers and people more in the medical field, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, 3 excellent people to study their work. They all talk about love and gratitude mixed in with the quantum physics of healing that they're discussing.
Right.
And it's so joyful to have.
It holds
Absolutely.
a vibration. Absolutely.
Yes, yes. And
gratitude raises your vibration so many notches up that it can blow out any kind of diseased or malformed cells or viruses of certain kind that can't live within a certain frequency. The higher your frequency is, the higher your vibration is.
Absolutely.
It creates more homeostasis. And yeah.
And there are so many little things in life to be grateful for. I mean, I found myself this morning, what I fixed myself for breakfast was a raw spinach burrito. Just mayo on a tortilla and roll it up with a big pile of spinach. And as I was devouring that, I found myself just profoundly grateful and thanking Mother Earth for for the wonders of spinach, simple but still profound, because I was making myself healthier because of a gift from Mother Earth.
Right.
Simple as that. And that's pretty magical when you think about all the food that we eat, how it's all distinctive and different. Well, that's frequency and vibration. Mm-hmm. Why does one tree grow tangerines and the other one grows apples and the other one grows plums? Well, if you analyze each piece of fruit under a microscope and use a spectrometer to measure the frequency, it's vibrating at a different frequency. The plum is vibrating at a different frequency because it's purple. The color affects the frequency. The substance inside affects the frequency.
And the trees are talking to each other.
Oh, absolutely.
Scientific proof. There is electrical frequencies. There's electrodes going through. There's actual cellular communication between trees.
Absolutely.
They know about each other, and they know there's conversations, I bet, about water and about sun and about if there's an orchard of like 20 and there's like 4 trees here, these trees over here need more nutrients,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Mother Earth always knows how to balance things,
Once again, another distraction on Oriah's part. My computer was dying.
Okay. That's okay.
So we're going back. I'm going to jump into the next question, by the way, okay? So let's...
Go right ahead.
Okay. So the next question that I have for you is, which events are triggered memories of starseed origin for you?
The events that triggered those memories the most would be when I personally witnessed UFOs. And in all instances except for 2, it was at night. And sometimes I was out in the middle of the desert by myself. Sometimes I was hiking up in the mountains. One time I was up on some high peaks right down by the Mexican border here in Southern California, and saw lights doing loop-to-loops, like figure 8s across the sky, across a ridge of mountains. And I'm saying to myself, there is no conventional aircraft that can fly loops like that rapidly. A helicopter can't do it. A conventional airplane can't do it. They'd have to be flying sideways because the lights were facing. You see things like that, and of course, what is always the most curious for me is what beings are in those crafts. Where are they from? If they had ill will against us, well, they would have done something a long time ago. They obviously have way advanced technology. And, getting back to the Pleiadians and Arcturians, I sincerely believe that they are substantially advanced from us, not just technologically, but in significant ways spiritually. And that when you mix those two together, honorable, loving spirituality, loving beings with advanced technologies, that's, I think, what piques a lot of my interest and interest for many, many people. Who are these people? Where do they come from? How do they travel across maybe 2-3 galaxies to get here in maybe minutes or only hours? Whereas our astronomers or our NASA people tell us, no, to fly from here to Jupiter, here's how long it's going to take you. And of course, we've flown probes and all out there. But
scientists say that they've sent cameras on the surface of Venus and Mars and Jupiter, and they didn't see any uninhabitable. It was uninhabitable. There was no way that there was any life form other than just microbes. And what was really funny is Red Eagle said, well, have you considered that maybe your technology is not advanced enough to capture the beings that live at the frequency and the vibration that they live at? So you're basically, imagine if you came to Earth and you had a little magnifying glass, you were just this alien coming through. This is not a good example, but just go with me. And
yes.
So imagine, poof, all the inhabitants of the Earth are gone. Animals, every living creature, every item, every material object has disappeared. And all you see is the landscape, and you see the water, and you see the mountain ranges, and you just see desert, and you just see the topography, right? So you say, oh, well, maybe this is not inhabitable for a particular species, but maybe it's because you don't have the technology to be able to visually see the beings that live here. That's basically the idea.
Exactly.
There are beings that live in all of the planets in the solar system. There's massive, massive amounts of civilizations out there.
Yes. So back to the question that you asked about which events triggered memories.
Yes.
Mostly it was my personal UFO type encounters. But then also from time to time, I just have a feeling when I wake up in the morning. I don't have any conscious recall of details, but I can feel that I was on a mothership somewhere. And I think, as I mentioned before, I don't know whether they're Pleiadian or Arcturian or both. But it's just a feeling that I have sometimes. And usually when I have that feeling is when I'm not looking for it and I'm not trying to force it or make it happen. You can't do that. You have to allow these types of experiences in your life. And if you're relaxed about it and calm, this is where meditation comes in. I meditate religiously every single morning. I wake up between 4:15 to 4:30, autopilot. I don't have to use and I usually get up and make myself a cup of coffee, but then I go back to bed and I go into my meditation time. And I find that's the best time of day for me. And I know many others do it that way too. Why? Because you have no distractions. Your phone isn't ringing. It's absolutely dead quiet at that time of morning. And that's when I spend my time connecting with divinity as I perceive it to be, because I believe that the true mission, if you will, for meditation is to connect with, however works for you, in particular with your heart, to connect with your highest envisionment of what divine loving consciousness is. And the most magnificent version of that you can come up with in your own mind and heart, in my opinion, if you strive to connect with that, just what's my mission here in meditating? Just to connect with love, the source of all. And that for me, that makes my daily life much more joyful. And I'm so addicted to meditation, I don't know where I would be without it. If I miss my meditation, which might happen 2 or 3 times a year, I can feel it all day long.
Right.
Because I didn't get that powerful connection that just resonates so deeply that you have no words for it, really. You can't describe
that connection. What I really love is how you sound when you're talking about meditation. Like you literally, your voice changes and you go deep into the experience. So if you're listening, you probably have noticed that when Dennis started talking about the connection, he actually started to go back into that feeling. That's how profound it is. It's not just an act, it's an actual experience.
It is, and it can be as attractive as a physical attraction can be for either a potential or existing mate in your life.
That's a good
It
one.
can be, for me, profoundly more powerful than that. And when you connect with that love that's inside of you, then you have more love to offer to that mate that you may be focusing your love on, and they will feel it.
It's like you get your tanks filled. Like
Yes.
you fill up your tanks again, so you're back to full, like a full battery charge every time.
Absolutely. And more to share. So
it's also respect that you give yourself, isn't it? It's respecting yourself as a human being and your human experience.
Yes. Yes. Gaining respect for what magnificent beings that we are. I always like to challenge people. If you listen to any of the prescription drug commercials on television, they're basically saying, you have a terrible immune system. Whoever the designer was blew it. And that's why you need our prescription drugs.
Right.
Which completely undermines, if you believe in any type of a divine being or entity or intelligence, and that loving being or energy or group of beings, we're all together on the other side, so to say, they all love you profoundly, right, for one thing, and you can feel that and connect with that. It undermines people's belief in their own immune system. And where I was going with that is that either you believe that your supreme divine consciousness, whatever it is that you believe in, either that designer blew it on your immune system, or you can take the perspective, whoever it was that designed this body originally gave me a freaking kick-ass immune system. And it's really, really strong all the time. And this type of self-talk is very, very powerful. It transforms you at the DNA and RNA level. We have the ability to transform ourselves, and love and gratitude and feeling those feelings, whatever it is that works for you. When I get down, sometimes it's putting on some of my favorite music. Sometimes it's turning everything off and putting earplugs in order to have no outside distractions when I'm meditating. Usually when I'm meditating early in the morning, I don't have to worry about earplugs. But later on in the day, sometimes to close, sirens going by or whatever, I want to close all of that out and connect with it.
Us human beings, it's just like anything, any kind of machinery or a car or an AI, an avatar. If you think about it, imagine if you had this really, really, really expensive Lamborghini and it's so beautiful, and somebody gives you the keys, it's shiny, brand new off the showroom floor, and you drive it straight into your farm. Let's say you're somewhere in Missouri and you have this big, beautiful farm. You drive this Lamborghini into the mud. They gave you the keys and they said, okay, use this Lamborghini for all the needs, all your vehicular needs that you need on this farm. So you take that Lamborghini and you bale hay and you are pulling things and you're dragging it around and scratching it up and revving the engines and getting out of mud pits. And you're not really knowing how this car really is meant to be used. You don't really fully understand it. You just know that it just goes forward and stops and reverses. And you're not taking care of it or enjoying it the way it was intended. And that's exactly how the human being is. Most human beings are not told. They're given the keys and they throw you out there, and they're just not telling you in school and in other places. They just don't explain to you the mechanisms that you are and how delicate and how your frequencies work and how you can program yourself and how you can change your disposition, your personality, your DNA, your immune system. You can recode and decode any part of your being. That's like taking the Lamborghini and putting it to good use the way it was intended, and putting it out there and knowing how every single little knob works and go and ride it properly. So what Dennis is talking about, and hopefully this is a new state of consciousness that people are arriving to, is how to properly take care of your body, how to properly understand your body. It's not a fad. It's that we're coming out of an ignorance. We're coming out of stages of ignorance that our forefathers and our ancestors had no idea. No one taught them. There's some cultures that are more in tune, right? There's like Chinese medicine, and the Asian and Indian cultures they're more in tune to taking care of the body. But it's barely starting to reach the Northern Hemisphere.
Exactly, exactly. You know, I heard an interesting story on that one time by Deepak Chopra.
Mm.
He grew up in a medical family in India, and his father was a physician. Well, his grandmother, his father's mom, was a metaphysical Ayurvedic healer. And I remember him telling a story one time. He says, there were times when my dad would give up on a patient and kind of reluctantly say, well, Mom, Deepak's grandmother, you know, could you see if you could help this person? And she would help them with Ayurvedic herbs and energy treatments and things like that. And she could cure them. Whereas his father, who was a highly credentialed medical physician, you know, with all the right credentials, was unable to do so. And he says, even though I became a conventional medical doctor, went to medical school and everything, he says, that's always had an influence on me and made me realize that there are invisible things that can influence our bodies, namely our consciousness, in many, many ways. And of course, all of the quantum physics consciousness type experiments that they've been doing at places like Stanford and Princeton. And of course, they don't tell you about this kind of stuff on the evening news on CNN, you know, that, wow, consciousness does, in fact, affect quantum particles. And they've proven that over and over again in many of the top labs and some of the top universities around the world. But what are the ramifications of that? Well, quantum particles are the base material for atoms, which are the base material for molecules, which are base material for your body. So that means, wow, so I can influence the building blocks of my body, which is quantum, and it goes all the way up into my cellular level. Well, that means that I have the ability to morph the cells in my body strictly on my beliefs and feelings. That's a profound
That's why you hear about people who get
awareness.
diagnosed with a tumor or a malignant tumor, and they do the work on themselves, like you're mentioning, and they
Yes.
go back to the doctor, and it's gone.
Yes.
Happens
You know, there's
all the time.
an amazing video that you can find on YouTube that Greg Braden features in some of his teachings. And the scene is a medicineless hospital, as he calls it, in China. Okay. And this lady's laying on the hospital bed. There are 6 practitioners around her that are about to chant. And they're showing a tumor, I think, sitting on the top of her kidneys or something with a, or what do they call that machine where they look at babies inside? Ultrasound, yes. So they freeze the tumor on the left side. They split the screen in half. And on the left side, you can see the tumor. And on the right side is real time. So they freeze so you can see the actual size of the tumor. And these 6 people, practitioners, begin chanting a word that to them, it's not a magic word. To them, they've all agreed this particular chant, we're seeing this person as 100% whole. We're not saying tumor go away. We're just seeing them as whole and healthy. And you literally watch on the real-time side that tumor disappear in under 2 minutes. And he shows that video. And you realize, oh my gosh, these people with their intent alone, they weren't touching the people, it wasn't hands-on, they were just standing there chanting. And they make this tumor disappear in front of everybody's eyes. And it's really, really profound to see that. And so, of course, the next question is, well, could I learn to do that all by myself without practitioners standing around me in a hospital bed? And the answer to that is yes.
Did you hear about the little boy that was diagnosed many years ago? I think in the 70s, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And somebody gave him the idea, or he came up with the idea, that if he just pretends it's one of those little shoot 'em up kind of like games. I think at the time it was Atari. So it was like a missile, like, pew, 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 and he just imagined that happening to the tumor as he lay in bed day after day, and no one knew he was doing it. And each time they checked, it was getting smaller until it disappeared. And then he told them what he was doing. And this is documented.
Wow.
Yes.
What a great story that is.
Yes. And that's a little
phenomenal.
boy. That's a little boy. So we come innately with this knowledge, and we're, I hate to say dumbed down, but there's kind of like a muffle effect of like this kind of pressure where we're supposed to conform into whatever the media is telling us in commercials and pharmaceuticals, and
To depend on them rather than us.
yeah. But,
Yep.
you know, we'll definitely save that conversation for the next couple videos we're going to do.
No problem. Yeah, that's a deep conversation, a whole
I'd
nother
love to go
subject.
deeper into that about how to come out
Yes.
from that. And there are people that are suffering in their relationships and in their family life, just their interpersonal connections. And what Dennis is talking about, the actual healing modalities that you can do with yourself, with the cellular transformation, you could do it in your interpersonal relationships as well. So if you can change your body constitution, you can change your family dynamic. And it doesn't mean you have to alter everyone in your family. It's more about how you change within yourself. So I'd like to ask you, we're doing really good, and as far as time goes, and I would
Awesome.
like to ask you the last question is,
Okay.
how does all of these influences that you have had over your years of study, how has it influenced you now, and what do you envision in a benevolent and loving starseed future for yourself?
Well, a lot of the vision for a starseed future, I actually made a big leap today by participating in your starseed Zoom meeting, where there were people around the world collecting together because they have, even if they're new to this, and I know that some of the people
It was their
on that,
first
yeah, it was their,
conversation of starseed.
exactly, but they were drawn for a reason. They were drawn for a reason. They were attracted to your group that you have created on Facebook for a very, very specific reason. And they probably can't even explain it, but that's okay. Something resonated for them in their heart. They may have thought it was from their brain, but there was a resonance in the heart that occurred. They had to be on that call because there were people on that, in that meeting, for those of you that weren't able to participate, that were up at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning in Australia and New Zealand. There were people from England. There were people from around the world. And they even declared, oh no, I was happy to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning for this. Well, that's a pretty strong heart feeling for those people to have, where it didn't matter to them
Right.
what time it was occurring. They were determined to be in that meeting of starseeds
Right.
from around the world. And so as far as the future, the starseed future, as I see it, it's because of missions like you're on, Oriah, to create a venue where these people can get together and recognize each other. You know, there were, I have to say, speaking of cosmic consciousness, there were at least 2 or 3 people because the moment that I saw their face when they joined the group, I recognized them.
That is giving me chills.
And it was an energetic recognition. I recognized their energy, not necessarily their physicality.
Right.
So it wasn't like I'd met them before here on this timeline, like, oh yeah, I met that person at the supermarket the other day. No, it wasn't. It was a deep recognition that I know why they're here.
Right.
They were drawn here for a reason, because they're hungry for that special, we'll just call it esoteric knowledge that allows them to grow as an individual, and that their growing process can be happy and loving and delightful. You know, I mean, how many people talk about the word bliss anymore?
Oh.
When was the last time you blissed out on something? Wow. Frequently, I hope. Frequently, I hope. But so many people I think maybe that they're not worthy of having a blissful marriage or a blissful relationship of some sort, or a blissful career, or you can have a blissful time pulling the weeds out of your tomato plants out in the backyard. That can be bliss. Like, oh, wow, I know what these tomatoes are going to be like when they ripen. Oh, my gosh, I'm going to have these big, thick tomato sandwiches. And you can find things in your daily life to savor and to love and to have gratitude for. And that gratitude carries a vibration so that you then attract more things to be grateful for.
Don't underestimate the power of happiness, because I have given up on happiness just like many people have. And I realized that it was slowly killing me, because that's what it does. It just shortens your lifespan. It's shutting the curtains. It's shutting the windows on your view of life. So as I started to engage in activities that made me happy, I was very rusty. And it was like trying to teach myself again how to connect, how to feel good. So the littlest things mattered. Like Dennis is talking about pulling the vegetable plants out of the garden. There's little things in your day. Everybody has their specific little things that brings them pleasure. Some people, it's as simple as using their favorite cup to have a cup of coffee or tea. Some people like to sit in a certain chair. What we're discussing is what happens when you have that little spark of happiness. It's not just a frivolous moment. It's actually source codes. You are getting light frequencies. You are emitting and transmitting energy in that moment, and you are connecting to something that's happening. So what we do and what we have done as metaphysicians, because both Dennis and I and Riz are metaphysicians, and what we have done is we take those moments and we crack the doors open. So we just pull the experience out as far as we can. So we milk it, we open it, and we keep bringing more. And what happens is you get younger because you start to feel like when you were a kid, because you start to enjoy things at its fullest again. It doesn't have lids on it, labels, categories. It's not smushed and compacted so that you can't really enjoy it because you're not allowed to, you're not supposed to. And it doesn't matter what anybody thinks because you're saving your own life. This is about you. So who cares if people make fun of you because you're the only happy person in the group? Don't pay any attention to that because this is your lifespan we're talking about. So when he says to be very, cognizant and aware of the moment-to-moment moments that you can have of gratitude, he's talking about how you can elongate your life. He's talking about you want to live and be healthy and bright and have an enjoyable experience of life and enjoy the moments that you can. Every moment you can, there's intelligence inside of that for you.
There's some interesting science behind that I'll just share very quickly. In the work that Dr. Joseph Dispenza is doing, he hauls all of these experts in brain frequencies along with him, these PhDs that have all this high-tech equipment where they put all the sensors on your skin. Mm-hmm. And he brings them from Princeton and Stanford and Harvard and Yale. And they're not looking for what he's looking for, but he says, hey, it's your equipment, you operate the equipment. And even they're astounded. But one of the major indicators that they find in aging is there's something called telomeres, which are just little football-shaped things, you might say,
right?
Or cigar-shaped UFOs, if you will. That's in our DNA, tiny little things. And as we age, they shorten.
That's
okay?
Right.
Well, what Joe Dispenza has been doing, he says, we'll actually watch in real time because we have these people hooked up all these sophisticated gadgets. And when they get into that sweet spot during a meditation, he says, we can literally watch in real time their telomeres grow longer. What's happening with that? You're reversing, that's age reversal.
That's right.
If you can make your telomeres get longer, that is literally age reversal. That's exactly what you're hitting on. And it's exciting now that there's science that supports that, where people can see this stuff happening on computer screens in real time.
Can you imagine that a simple thing like happiness, it's like turning on a light in your life?
Yes.
A certain frequency is emitted out of you, but can you imagine just that little moment, if you add them up and you stretch them out over the course of your life? Do you know that you can reverse aging? You can reverse your health. It's not a hype. It's people make fun of people who are happy. When did that start? What trend is that? Doesn't that sound super ignorant? That doesn't sound intelligent. When people make fun of other people who are happy, that doesn't make any sense. And so when we're supposed to be advancing as a human race, that's the first thing that our star brothers and sisters are going to look for is, do they get it? Do they get the beauty of life? Do they get who they are? Do they get happiness and joy of existence? These star brothers and sisters that we love and admire, our future selves and our other versions of us, already know this information. That's why they are where they are. So you see, when you see futuristic things, there's lighter colors and it's brighter, and people think it's fantasy and people think it's just frivolous and it's airy-fairy. But if it makes you happy, how much is that worth for you? Is that legitimate? Or is that just some little fading, little popular thing that you're going to do is just be happy for a day or two because it's cool? We're going into a whole nother field. when you bring in quantum mechanics and you bring in esoteric teaching, spirituality, star seeds, and happiness, it is a cocktail. Dennis knows. He's living that cocktail. He is the embodiment of that cocktail. And so am I. It's a living, breathing art. It's an art of expression to understand yourself at this level. So I don't even know what else to say on this first video. This was a really great push on the swing set, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you know, Dennis, you know how long we can talk, right?
Oh, yes.
We can go for hours.
Well, there'll be other opportunities for sure.
I can't wait. I definitely want to schedule and get our second video in this series out. And if it takes us 4 or 5 videos, so be it. And we'll just keep chopping this tree down until we can really bring to light and explain exactly what's happening in our alien communities as much as we know, how they're affecting us, how we're coming forth to match this new vibration, how we're all having more moments of awakenings, and there's more awakenings upon awakenings upon awakenings. Have you ever noticed that, Dennis?
Absolutely.
You awaken.
Absolutely.
You awaken into the awakening. You awaken to the awakening.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like an awakening within an awakening within an awakening. It's like you're waking up in a dream, and then you wake up again, and then you wake up again. That's what it's like. It's like you're waking up to waking up.
Yes, absolutely. You know, there are a lot of things that we can talk about in that vein. As far as dream experiences go,
we have to do that.
Yes, and recognizing the difference between let's just call it a random dream, and that you're actually on another timeline and interacting with people that you know on this timeline. And
also, if you're on another planet, like I have visited many planets, and also I have visited other Earths. I have visited other versions of Earth.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that, because the Supergirl series that's been on for a couple of years now, for the last year, they've been doing a sequence of episodes all about multiple different Earths.
Right.
And they were time jumping and dimensional jumping between the different Earths, and they were encountering versions of themselves.
Wow.
On these other Earths. So it's very interesting how Hollywood sometimes.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
They pick up on this, don't they? And they channel it.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Dennis, what I'm going to do is just leave all the links below. And I want to thank everybody once again to just join us and learn and understand different things about life and humanity and existence. And it's such a pleasure to bring this information to you. So please join us again next time. And Dennis, thank you so, so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And I just want to wish you all the most fun that you can possibly have today and in the future.
That's right.
Love you all.
Love you.
Namaste.
Namaste.